Good afternoon, bonjour. I would like to introduce my colleague, Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan, who is the officer in charge of contract and Indigenous policing. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the land that we are gathered on is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Today, I would like to provide a brief statement outlining how the RCMP is responding to the evolving situation in Nova Scotia related to the lobster fishery, including how we are responding to the related criminal activities. I will begin by assuring people of Nova Scotia, the Mi'kmaq, and all Canadians that we are fully committed to keeping the peace, keeping people safe, and enforcing the law. The role of the RCMP is to uphold public safety, including the protection of persons and property. Our actions to date are indicative of our strong commitment to this mandate. As many others have done, I will also use this opportunity to strongly encourage calm and the engagement in peaceful and constructive dialogue. It is only through respectful discussion will we see the easing of tension and, most importantly, the path to resolution. Je commencerai par assurer la population de la Nouvelle-Écosse, le Mi'kmaq, et tous les Canadiens que nous sommes pleinement déterminés à maintenir la paix, à assurer la sécurité des gens et à faire respecter la loi. Le rôle de la GRC est d'assurer la sécurité publique, y compris la protection des personnes et des biens. Nos actions à ce jour témoignent de notre ferme engagement envers ce mandat. Comme beaucoup d'autres l'ont fait, je profiterai également de cette occasion pour encourager fortement la calme et l'engagement dans un dialogue pacifique et constructif. Ce n'est que grâce à une discussion respectueuse que nous verrons l'apaisement des tensions et surtout le chemin vers la résolution. The RCMP has been fully engaged in this issue since mid-September, when tensions began to escalate between First Nations and other fishers. Our goal has been and will continue to be to ensure lawful, peaceful dialogue and resolution. The RCMP has a significant presence in the Matagan area, including uniformed ground resources, uniformed water resources, divisional liaison teams, and dedicated investigative teams. The command team in Nova Scotia, supported by the national headquarters, is closely monitoring the situation. It's fluid and it's dynamic, and we will reallocate and reprioritize resources should the situation warrant. And as we did in recent days, we will mobilize RCMP officers from neighboring RCMP divisions to augment resources on the ground should the need arise to keep communities safe. When people resort to violence and criminal activities to express their displeasure with a situation or towards a specific group, the RCMP's increased involvement is necessary as part of the effort to maintain peace and order and to uphold the law. Unfortunately, there have been those that have been engaged in criminal behavior. As is widely known, there have been several instances of violent and destructive criminal acts in recent weeks. I strongly condemn these acts. The Nova Scotia RCMP has launched investigations into a number of incidents with 2 people already charged, including the assault against Chief Sack. Suspects have been identified in the other incidents and investigations are ongoing, and I encourage anyone who has any information to contact the Nova Scotia RCMP. I can assure you that when criminal actions occur, the RCMP will investigate. Je peux vous assurer que si et quand des actions criminelles ont lieu, la GRC enquêtera. I am fully confident in the ability of RCMP members on the ground to keep peace, to keep people safe, and to investigate criminal acts and hold perpetrators to account. We all want the same thing, a peaceful resolution to this dispute. All parties must come together for this to happen. This includes RCMP, local, provincial, federal governments, and all members of the community. Nous voulons tous la même chose.
We
Une
all want the
résolution
same thing,
pacifique.
a peaceful
Toutes les parties
resolution.
doivent se
All
rassembler
parties must come together
pour que cela se
for
produise.
this to happen.
Cela comprend le
This
GRC,
includes the RCMP,
les gouvernements locaux,
local,
provinciaux,
provincial,
fédéraux, et
federal
tous les
governments,
membres
and all
de la
members of the
communauté.
community.
With that, I will conclude my opening remarks and I will take questions. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Nous allons procéder maintenant aux questions.
Now
Est-ce
proceed
que
to questions.
l'opérateur est là au
Is the
téléphone?
operator on the line?
Do we have the operator online?
Thank you. Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time. If you have a question, s'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Christy Kirkup from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hello, Commissioner. I know today you're saying that the RCMP is fully committed to keeping the peace and enforcing the law in Nova Scotia, but there have been serious concerns raised about officers who were captured on video who many people believed were standing by as acts of violence were playing out. I didn't hear you address any of those concerns today, and I'm wondering if you can please do that. Why have this news conference today and not make a single mention of concerns about how officers on the ground responded to this situation?
Thank you for your question. I want to reassure, again, the people of Nova Scotia, the Mi'kmaq, and all Canadians that we are managing this issue. And we are, as well, like yourself, deeply concerned by the acts of violence and the property damage that are linked to the dispute. Of course, we can't be in every single location, but when we are there and when we are made aware of those actions, we will step in, we will intervene, we will investigate, and we will hold those to account who continue to pursue criminal activity. Also committed to that, we are committed to the reconciliation with Indigenous people through proactive communication and engagement with the Indigenous and strengthening the trust and the relationship. Our approach has always been a measured approach that encourages police to undertake that proactive engagement and commitment to the Indigenous people and the people of Nova Scotia.
And just as a follow-up, if I may, with respect, Commissioner, there have been calls for your own resignation, given comments that you made previously around systemic racism. I know you addressed some of the concerns at the time, but why should Indigenous people and all Canadians have confidence in your leadership and your ability to tackle systemic racism within your force?
Like I said a few months ago, I did acknowledge that there is systemic racism in the RCMP. And from that time, I have been, as my entire organization, I've been listening, I've been learning, I've been engaging, and I've been consulting with many groups from racialized communities, as well as Indigenous communities, leaders, Senator Sinclair, the Commissioner of the MMIWG, to name a few, and looking for a way forward. Since I got in the chair as commissioner, I've had a mandate to modernize the RCMP. And through Vision 150, we've been working on our policing services, our stewardship, our people, and our culture. We have also been working at advancing equity, diversity, and trust in Canadians. The events have been changing. We are a police agency of the times. The times are changing, and we need to change with those times. So we've brought in a cultural awareness and humility course that is mandatory for all employees of the RCMP. Excuse me. We've brought in, we are co-developing with Indigenous and racialized communities an anti-racism training that will be mandatory for all communities. We've introduced the blanket exercise at the training academy. We've done a lot of work towards reconciliation, and Nova Scotia is one of the greatest examples. Two of the things that have stemmed out of Nova Scotia are the ability for people to swear an oath using an eagle feather, and the first sweat lodge in an RCMP headquarters environment has been in Nova Scotia, and all of those initiatives will be looking at rolling those out nationally. We are looking at we're in the midst of creating an RCMP Indigenous Collaborative and Co-Development Accountability Office where we can engage at the frontline level. And when we make decisions going forward, we want to co-develop many of these decisions so that we can be attuned to the expectations of all Canadians. In our recruitment, we're looking at, of course, we want to bring in people that are reflective of our communities. So we are looking at reducing the bias, going to character-based type recruitment, and even the people that we are going to be hiring for proactive recruiters should be reflective of the people that we want to bring into our organization and are reflective of the Canadians that we serve.
Next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Olivier Lefebvre, Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous.
Merci. J'aimerais savoir, les ministres ont répété plusieurs fois lundi que c'est aux policiers de faire respecter les lois. Le ministre Miller a même dit que les policiers ont laissé tomber les Autochtones. Puis sur le terrain, plusieurs nous rapportent que les policiers ne sont pas intervenus lors d'incidents violents. Donc, ma question serait comment vous expliquez ça?
We saw that the RCMP didn't intervene. How would you explain that?
C'est toujours notre mandat est de garder la paix et c'est certainement quand quelque chose arrive, il y a des fois qu'on n'est pas exactement dans la même place que l'infraction, mais la minute qu'on voit que quelque chose s'est passé, on va rentrer, on va faire l'intervention, on va faire notre propre enquête et on va être certain que la personne qui est responsable pour le crime va être mis dans le système juridique. C'est toujours dans tous les cas qu'on a présentement en Nouvelle-Écosse, on a fait les arrestations, ainsi on a mis les accusations. Il y a encore des enquêtes qui continuent. Et le moment qu'on a le preuve, on va mettre les accusations pour le cours.
Avez-vous un suivi?
Poursuis avec une question de relance. Effectivement, merci. Le gouvernement fédéral dit que c'est aux policiers de faire respecter les lois. Vous dites que c'est un enjeu, que ne s'agit pas d'un enjeu policier, mais bien d'un enjeu politique. Donc, il semble que vous renvoyez la balle entre la police et le gouvernement. Mais en attendant, j'aimerais savoir qui protège les membres de la Première Nation et des communautés de l'Ouest de la Nouvelle-Écosse.
This conflict has been going on for many, many years, and we have a very specific mandate, and our mandate is to keep the peace, keep people safe, and enforce the law. And when a person is not abiding by that law, we will intervene, we will investigate, and we will hold those people to account. The violence and the criminal activity will not be tolerated. As far as the negotiations go with the fisheries, we have divisional liaison teams on the ground. These are specially trained members who build relationships with the various groups. Most are Indigenous, and they are from Nova Scotia, and they are culturally competent and specially trained. The team lead is in discussion with Chief Sack and other leaders. They have discussions and dialogues to keep a peaceful environment on the ground so that respectful and positive dialogue can continue at the levels of with our Department of Fisheries or with government officials. So there is an interaction, but our mandate is very, very specific.
Une autre question au téléphone?
One more question on the line.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Kayla Hansel from CBC National News. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Sipekne'katik Band is seeking a court injunction today to prohibit blockades around some of the wharves, lobster pounds that have been the sites of violence and aggression, as well as to stop people from cutting their traps. They're asking a judge to require police to arrest and remove anyone contravening this injunction. So why has it come to this? Why do they have to go to court to get the RCMP to do their jobs?
With any court order injunction, if there is an enforcement order, we will definitely enforce. Some of the enforcement on the water is the responsibility of the Department of Fisheries, but we do work together with them on that. Again, we use a measured approach so that we would like peaceful resolutions. And often in some of these cases, it's important that we use our divisional liaison teams to have that dialogue so people have the right to peaceful protest. We can keep the peace, we can keep people safe, and focus on a peaceful outcome while strengthening those relationships.
Do you need this injunction in order to be able to do your job?
No, if people are not abiding by the law according to the Criminal Code of Canada, we will step in, we will intervene, we will investigate, and we will hold those people to account through the judicial system.
Thanks. We'll take a question from the room now.
Good afternoon, Olivia Stepanovich, CBC News. Commissioner Lucki, much of the criticism that the RCMP is facing is that if this situation was reversed and it were Indigenous fishermen who were the ones shooting flares at non-Indigenous commercial fishermen, cutting their traps, that the police response would be different, and that we wouldn't just see the police response be quicker, but that there would be much more force. How do you respond to that? And do you believe you have enough resources on the ground right now to keep the peace?
We have adequate resources on the ground. The situation is dynamic and fluid, of course, like I said, and we have a critical incident structure in place that is responsible for that operational response and the operational decisions. And they are the ones who do the reallocation, the reprioritization, and there's a constant assessment of those resources according to the threat environment and the tactics in line with that threat assessment. So they will reevaluate. So when things started to evolve last week, that's when the people on the ground made a request to the province to bring in additional resources from the other provinces, RCMP resources from the other provinces. When there is an infraction of the criminal code, we will enforce it. At times, there has been a couple of infractions where we have not witnessed it. So of course we have to do an investigation. And in most of those cases, arrests have been made and the people have been brought to court. So that's non-negotiable. When people break the law, this will not be tolerated, nor will violence be tolerated from anybody.
In your view, is law enforcement the right tool to deal with these heated situations over rights, where there are these historical grievances and these situations are created by other political actors? Or do we need to find another way, such as the creation of perhaps a peacekeeping domestic body here in Canada? What do you think?
Dialogue is always the best way to resolution, and respectful dialogue. Over the years, we have developed what we call liaison teams. And these, we use them in BC, we use them in Saskatchewan, we're using them in Nova Scotia. And these are people, members, RCMP members who are specially trained. They're on the ground, they're making relations. They have been dealing with these, we have one team leader who's been dealing with unfortunately, a lot of the fishery disputes in Nova Scotia for almost 20 years. So he's very adept, and he's very knowledgeable and very culturally competent. He develops those relationships before things get, the conflict arises. And our hope is that the conflict will not arise. But when you're dealing with certain rights, that's beyond the RCMP or the police to deal with. We are dealing with keeping the environment and the ground safe, and keeping people safe so that they can let their voices be heard in a safe manner, whether it's through a protest, a demonstration, or a rally, and holding those to account who choose to break the law.
Go back to the phone lines. Au téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Ross Lord from Global News Television. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner, how would you characterize the urgency of this? It's been referred to fairly widely as a crisis. I wonder if you consider it a crisis, and if so, what is the magnitude of this for you and your members?
We take every incident seriously, and we always assess the threat. And like I said, it's very dynamic, it's very fluid, and that threat assessment changes constantly. And that's why we adjust our operational posture. We look at this through different eyes. We're looking at this as actual actions on the ground or on the water that we're dealing with in partnership with the Department of Fisheries to make sure that we keep the peace. If we can keep a calm environment, then it's our hope that there will be positive dialogue, respectful dialogue that will lead towards a positive and peaceful resolution. So we need to continue. I cannot stress that we need to continue to advocate for calm, whether it's in any rally or demonstration, so that the positive discussions amongst the fishers and the governments in question can continue in a peaceful and constructive manner.
I just want to get back to the early point by one of my colleagues about members standing by during some of these episodes, like last Tuesday night at the Lobster Pound, when there was vandalism, threats, property damage. You said when you're aware, you will step in and intervene and hold to account. I think everyone on scene there was aware. So the fact that no one did anything to stop this, is that a reflection of the particular situation? Are you satisfied with that?
No, absolutely not. When that incident happened, that particular building was unoccupied. As soon as the event was reported, we were there and we were on the ground and we were following all the leads and we were following the track of the suspect, and the suspect was located. And often we are not, unfortunately, crime most often does not happen in front of us. It often happens not in front of us. So we rely on people reporting it, people providing the evidence, and us intervening. And so in the cases, for an example, the assault on Chief Sack, we were in the very close vicinity. We had lots of visibility. It did not happen right in front of us, but we were there within a very short time. Unfortunately, at the time, there was not an arrest made on location because the suspect melted into the crowd, but we were able to, through a proper investigation and a thorough investigation, identify the suspect, lay the charges, and bring that person to court.
Next question. Prochaine question.
The next question is from Keith Doucette from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm just wondering, just a couple of days ago, a federal minister was pretty pointed in his criticism of your force, saying that you'd let down Indigenous fishers. Do you, in fact, believe that that's the case? And if not, why not?
Absolutely not. I have full confidence in the highly trained officers on the ground. They're well trained to de-escalate. They're well trained in crisis intervention. And I have full confidence in the command structure and the management structure. And I have to tell you, the members have been, and including our divisional liaison teams, have been working tirelessly to maintain a peaceful environment and to help with a peaceful resolution to this conflict.
Yes, as a follow-up, I'm just wondering, you've had to call in extra forces to augment what you already had on the ground because of incidents that have occurred. I'm just wondering, in assessing the situation, might you have underestimated the number of people you may have needed on site to begin with, given that there is a history down here in this fishery in particular? I'm thinking of incidents back in the 90s in New Brunswick, various other places. How do you set the numbers that you need in these instances? And again, do you think you might have been a bit short when you first put officers in the field?
No, the situation, like I said, we had a critical incident command structure set up very early on. Again, the situation is dynamic, it's fluid, it changes all the time. Our operational posture is commensurate with the risk assessment and the threat assessment, and we adjust our tactics and we do constant reevaluation of our operational posture. So when we saw that the situation was evolving, we felt that there was a need to bring in additional resources, as well as relieving some of the resources that have been on the ground for several weeks. So relieving specialized resources and allowing that rotation, as well as bringing in additional resources. And this is, it's a fluid dynamic situation that evolves, and we will continue to keep the pulse on that. And our critical incident command, if we see that things are evolving and we require additional resources, then we'll do that. And it is, a great advantage with the RCMP because we can draw on resources from other divisions that will stay within the Atlantic bubble, if need be, because of the way the contracts work from province to province.
Thank you. Merci. Next question. Prochaine question.
The next question is from Brett Forrester from APTN News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Commissioner. Your colleague and somewhat right now, you're framing this as a dispute between two sides. However, as far as I'm aware, there's only one side that's committed the crimes you're discussing here, arson, destruction of property, mischief, trespass, and so on. And it's the non-Indigenous commercial fishers. So do you stand by your colleague's statement in Nova Scotia that this is a dispute between two sides and that you understand both sides?
What I do understand is that we need to be there to keep the peace and make people safe. We will enforce the criminal code infractions, and whoever chooses to break the law will be held to account. When we use our divisional liaison teams, they build relationships with all people on the ground because it's important that they talk with the various leaders so that we can establish the protocols and the rules of engagement, and to let them know that when there is, if somebody chooses to break the law, we will enforce it. And those are, when big groups of people are getting together, it's important that they understand those rules and that we develop relationships with all people involved in the conflict. When it comes to the criminal code activity, we will deal with those who break the law.
Thank you for that. Do you believe Indigenous people are breaking the law, or do you have any evidence that Indigenous people have broken the law?
I don't have specifics of the ethnicity of the people who have broken the law, but the ones that have broken the law have been held to account. And I don't have that information. I just know that in the case of the burning of the van, for example, and the assault on Chief Sack, those two people have been arrested, have been charged. There's a couple of other incidents where suspects have been identified. The investigation continues, and we will, as soon as we get the complete the investigation, if appropriate, charges will be laid.
Thank you. Merci. Next question. Prochaine question.
There are no further questions on the phone lines. Nous n'avons plus de questions pour le moment au téléphone.
That concludes the news conference this afternoon. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde.
Merci pour les questions. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for the questions.